So in this week's video, I am going to talk about flexibility for climbing. So I'm going to start off with a little side-by-side comparison, and then I'm going to go into my stretching routine and why I think more climbers need to spend a little more time stretching. Alright, so on this first boulder, you can see really how much less effort it takes for her to get over that foot. My hip is a lot further. And on this second boulder, you can see how much less effort it takes with that little bit of extra flexibility, being able to split your legs out. As you can see, I couldn't even do the boulder. I did eventually get my foot up, but still didn't have the flexibility to get the weight fully over that foot. Alright, so I think a lot of people overlook stretching, even myself, for most of the years that I've been climbing. And yeah, it's so important for climbing more efficient. There's actually some studies done by Tom Randall, and they found that a lot of times female climbers actually need like a certain percent less strength than a male climber to get up a route. And a big part of that is their hip flexibility, because it just takes a lot of weight off your hands if you can get your hips really close into the wall. So I'm going to run through some of my favorite stretches, a lot focused around the hip area, and yeah, let's get started. Alright, so I like to do a little down dog to get warm up, just kind of rock my hips back and forth, stretch out the hamstrings and the calves, and then a little bit of wrist stretching and mobility. I think this is really beneficial for climbers because everything is very tight in there from using your forearms so much. So I just like to stretch them out a bit and then also try and warm up the joint. Sit around in the child pose, kind of move my arms around. You can change the way it stretches. Usually stretches like around my shoulder and into my lat. A little more hamstring stretching. Grab my toes and rock my hips back and forth. I've been trying to stretch my hamstrings a lot too because I'm working on a couple different handstand progressions, like a press to handstand and stuff, so having loose hamstrings seems to help a lot with all those movements. And then when I grab my one foot, I try and keep both my shoulders kind of square to that foot, so when I'm grabbing my right foot, I try and pull my left shoulder forwards. And then I also really like, if you are grabbing your right foot, turn your body to the left, try and like pull your left arm up, and it stretches into your side body really nicely. This deep squat is one of my favorites. Start off, just touch one knee to the ground. This is more of a mobility routine than a stretch, which I think is great to do before you climb, especially your knees like twist a lot like that with drop knees and stuff, so help prevent any knee injuries and loosen up the hips and give them a little more range of motion. Just go back and forth about 3 times. And with this deep squat, it's really important that you put all the weight on your heels. You're not like standing on top of your toes, but sitting completely on your heels. And then if you're not quite flexible enough, it's totally okay and probably better to put your hands behind you to support yourself a little bit.
especially coming back up. If you don't have that mobility, it's pretty tough to get your leg out, and it kind of stresses your knee.
Alright, so this hip one is one of my favorite stretches because it really you can get three different muscles just by a couple different variations. So the first, kind of like really focus, make sure you're really square, and it'll get more of the hip flexor. You can even try and squeeze your glute and it'll get it better. And then if you rotate a little bit to the opposite side of that leg, it'll go more into your IT band, like the side of your hip. And then last, pull your chest up. You can even lift your arm up. It's gonna get all the way up into your psoas, which causes a lot of problems for people from sitting down all the time because the muscle is short all day and gets really tight. So all of these are really good to lengthen these muscles. And then this next one, pretty simple. If you're flexible, if your hips are flexible, you probably won't feel anything. But you just try and sit on the ground in between your legs. If that's too easy, you can sit back. This is like the second stage, and then if that's too easy, you can lay all the way down. It's a little tight for me laying all the way down. This one, you got to be really careful with your knees. Because if your hips are tight, you're going to feel a lot of stress in your knees. So you can even sit on a block, just ease your way into it and don't push it too hard if the pain's in the knees. And also when you're back here, if you try and engage those glutes again, it's going to get into your quads really nice. But yeah, this one and this deep squat I think are really good for getting that hip mobility, especially climbing when you're trying to high step. Less resistance, or you're gonna have to use less energy. Another thing I see a lot in climbing is if you're not as flexible, getting your foot up, you have to kind of lean away from the wall. It puts a lot more weight on your hands. If you notice, if you watch any climbers that have really flexible hips, their body doesn't move at all, just their leg kind of go anywhere. This one is kind of a help you work into the bridge. So you start in the deep squat, reach back, and then the goal is to try and rotate around into a bridge. So you come up like this, come back around, and if you are more flexible, you can fully go into a bridge and then come out the other way and then go back and forth like that. For all these mobility stretches, I usually just do 3 to each side. This one I'm actually pretty bad at. Another one that you got to be careful with your knees. This one you can flex your toes, helps protect your knees, but just so like this. You can also, if it's too intense, you can put a block or some support, a pillow under this leg. Just kind of lean forward and back. Try to force this leg down. And then, so for form on a lot of these stretches, I like to just mess around with everything. So mess around with like tucking your chin. I usually feel the stretch get a lot more intense, especially with my hamstrings. You can also mess around with flexing and relaxing your toes to see how it stretches the muscles differently. But yeah, just try and be aware of your body and do little twists to try and you can stretch different parts of your muscles. I don't think there's a perfect way to do any of this. This stretch here is a nice one for the tops of your feet. Just kind of ride back on your toes. Yeah, and I like to do a little bit of inversion work like handstands or headstands every day. Feels really nice just to get the blood moving around your body. Then for most of my stretches, I don't have a specific time limit. I try and do at least 30 seconds. Seems to work pretty well for me. I try and do it in the morning and the evening. Sometimes it's just one or the other, but definitely every day is the goal. And this stretching routine is kind of oriented towards my goals and my tightnesses and weaknesses. So if some of these don't do anything for you, maybe you can just go find some different stretches. Like move your body around, figure out what's tight, what's holding you back, and try and address those problems.